it turned into something legit. And then Ernie Alexander calls up and he said, "We want to sanction your track." And I didn't know what that meant. I thought we were in trouble. Like, what'd we do? And he explained it to me. And so I would have been 13 at that point. It's 50 years later. I get to go to California, run an event to honor him. We've been doing the NBA reunion for 7 years.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode. We should just dive in and start with a question of, Cash, who are you? Would you introduce yourself?
Oh, wow. And that's such a great question. I'm still trying to figure that out at age 63. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Man, I'm just a kid from Shawnee, Oklahoma. I never really matured past the age of 8. I'm 63 years old now. I had a career in BMX, but to use the term career is loose verbiage. I just rode my bike everywhere, and then we started popping wheelies, and we started racing each other. Then I got the idea, along with one of my buddies and my brother, that we would just go buy trophies and race each other, and it took off. I mean, this is in the early 70s, some of the photos that I sent you. But I'm a BMX guy. I'm a family guy first. I love Jesus. I love my family, and but on this earth, my family is where I spend my time and my effort and my thought. And I'm just a guy that used to race BMX like about 30 million other kids. And man, I sure enjoyed it. I stopped officially riding last year, 2024. I had a brain hemorrhage. I don't want to talk any more about that unless it's interesting to you. But the doctor said, "Hey, if you have a hit to the head, that'll be your last one." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm glad to be here." And here we are. I work in the financial industry, so I'm a financial nerd. I love numbers. I love entrepreneurship. I run a networking group called the Business Owners Networking Group. Unfortunately, the acronym for that is BONG. I am not a guy that ever saw a bong in his lifetime. I saw my first one a year ago here in Tulsa, so I waited that long to see a bong. So entrepreneur, dad. I'd much rather spend time with my family and my pets and just kind of hanging out. That to me, that is the good life.
Wonderful. That is, I have loved getting to know you and having conversations over the last few years, and it's been kind of a fun uh, journey and interesting how we got connected, which was through Guy Cooper. But anyway, I have loved getting to talk to you because you have a huge heart for BMX. You
Amen.
love BMX, and will you just talk about or mention the when you went in to have your pre-op for your brain? Will you just mention when the doctor said you've got a little bit of time, or I guess it was before you went in for your surgery?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the doctor came in the night before, and he's a neurosurgeon, so you don't want him to have a great personality. But he came in and he's like, "May I ask, who are you?" Same kind of question you just asked, and I'm like, "I'm patient number 3. I don't know. I don't know what you mean." And he said, "You had a bunch of people here today, and one of the guys brought you a brisket." He goes, "I've just never had a patient in ICU where somebody brought a brisket in, and you're about to have brain surgery, and you had a barbecue party in your room." And I'm like, "That pretty much sums up who I am." But he went on to tell me the odds, how many people wake up from that particular surgery, and how many people don't wake up. And I'm not too that stuff doesn't worry me. I've never worried about dying. I've always worried or focused on living my life, and I want to live while I'm here, and when I'm gone, I'm gone. Um, and so what I told him was like, "Look, doc, do your best, get some caffeine, get some good sleep." Everybody born in 1800, they're all dead. Every one of them, even the healthy ones. So don't sweat it. Do your best, and I'll see you in the morning. Now, in that surgery, they found out I didn't have one subdural hematoma. I had four, which I guess multiplies the odds of not waking up. But I woke up, and here I am on your podcast, and I'm psyched about it. BMX breakthrough. So yeah, that was the story. And I didn't, but that's when the neurosurgeon went, man, you're a weird dude. And it's
Yeah,
pretty cool when the neuro guy calls you a weird dude, but he
that's
figured.
true. Good, quite the compliment.
If
I
he
mean,
answered your question about who is this guy, it might come out very different. But I lived, and I'm going to keep living until it's over with.
that's great. Well, I think we've had a lot of conversations around BMX because that's how our formal introduction started, and then we've had conversations about business and such. But uh, one of the things that's fascinating to me, and that not a lot of people know, is that you are one of, I think, the youngest track operator in BMX history.
Well,
Accidentally.
we didn't. That was not intentional. The word track operator didn't exist in the early '70s, but it was my brother, my buddy Matt. Every so often a parent would come in and lend us a shovel. But it really was a collaborative. We would go down and buy trophies at Shawnee Trophy Company and charge money to come to the race, a buck or two, I don't remember. And so was I a track operator? We all were to one degree. It was a giant collaborative. I'm just one of a bunch of kids that found BMX, the leading or the trailing edge of the baby boom generation. And we wanted liberty, and bicycles were liberty for us. And to be able to put on races, and the races we started were flat track. We raced in a circle. Our heroes, we loved the motocross guys, Pierre Cars Makers, and all of those guys. But we also loved the flat track guys, Kenny Roberts, and from Shawnee, there was a guy named Randy Cleek that we all idolized. He was on Factory Yamaha. So we raced in circles the first few races. We raced 4 or 5 laps in a circle, and it made setting up the track very easy. And so Matt and I would go to the track and, set up a couple of cones or rocks, whatever we had, and we would race in circles. Man, it was awesome. So being a TO then was a very different thing than being a TO today. We love doing it. And it was a lot of fun. And glad to see that it had some impact in Oklahoma. But there were lots of people trying to run tracks around that same time.
No, I think one of the fun things about talking to you about BMX is that when you started as an unofficial track operator, you said you were just looking for, you and your friends just wanted a place to ride and you wanted a
That was
place
it.
for your other friends to ride. And I think there's something so innocent and so inspiring about that.
Well, people choose to be inspired, and if you're in the cycling world, I love telling the story, but the best part of the story is the number of people who were part of it. It never was just one person who had some vision or dream. It was like I said, it was a collaborative among a bunch of kids, and we had lots of diggers who would come out and help prep the track or whatever we were racing on that week. And I don't know, man. It was very raw. So
It's
we
cool.
kind of made it up as we went along.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think that's the heart and soul of BMX though was that I think it just kind of progressively became something that was more and more, and it started out so simple, and all these kids wanting to emulate heroes like Evil Knievel and ride
Oh man,
bikes, and
Evil Knievel was it, man. We used to take pictures and send them. Somehow we think we had Evil Knievel's address in Montana or wherever he was, and we sent him so many pictures of us jumping ramps. And yeah, he was such an inspiration. My uncle Jerry was an inspiration. He was a flat track racer. We all loved Kenny Roberts, flat track racer. And so those are the early inspirations. Well, it wasn't motocross; it became motocross. Um, so yeah, that's
wow.
man, what a fun time that was.
Yeah. So as you were growing up and you were riding, and you were in Shawnee, Oklahoma, which
Right.
I would assume that most people will not know where Shawnee is. So will you give like some some understanding of where that is in relation to
Oh,
larger cities.
well, it's 4 miles from Tecumseh, and it is just southeast of Salisaw, Henrietta, Wagoner, Bowlegs area. I'm just kidding. It is about 25 miles from Oklahoma City, and it is east of Oklahoma City, just right on I-40. Go down a little further, about 10 more miles, and that's the exit for Seminole, where another Oklahoma writer, Jeff Ruminer, was from. And so we were near Oklahoma City, and some of the second tracks were like in Moore, Oklahoma. And so we were just kind of at a neat little place where we could get to places. We raced a few times in Tulsa, a couple times in Norman, but Shawnee, Oklahoma, man, first track in Oklahoma was there, and it was run by kids. And and it was different times, man. If we didn't have a water hole, we wouldn't race. Like I've got some great photos of us filling up the water hole and or the mud hole, and we didn't want to compete unless we could, really get after it. So those are great times, man.
I love that. Well, so going from then to going to now, and you still have a huge desire to see the sport of BMX grow, to see BMX flourish. What is it about BMX that you saw then as a kid, you can now put into better words, but what is it about the sport that is so valuable? And that's a really small question for a really large answer. But what is it that Cash sees as valuable from the sport?
Well, I think there's two parts to it. The number one thing is nobody sits on the bench. It is absolutely for everybody. And, it's got a pretty easy economic entry point compared to, playing baseball and playing on travel teams and stuff like that. So I love that everybody gets to compete. The second thing I love about it, it really is one of the most democratic type sports. For me, it's a lot like golf, which I moved into after I left BMX, is that the best person usually wins. You don't have a whole bunch of accidental national number ones. You don't have a whole bunch. I mean, sometimes, seven guys fall and somebody wins the grands, and that happens, and that's just part of the deal. But man, in BMX, everybody has a chance. Everybody can be number one, and you're just as good as you choose to be in most cases.
I love that.
And we all need to feel like we're part of something. And this is just me, the kid talking. We all want to be part of something. And for me, BMX was a great thing to be part of. I got to be in a community, and not many people have this kind of community like you and I have, where we can talk on a podcast about something we're passionate about. I don't think the Little League teams from 1972 are getting together and talking about Little League play at this point. So we are all very fortunate in BMX, and even those who have differences with each other in BMX, and those are plenty, and some call them rivalries, and most of them are just silly. But even then, tremendous competitors can come back 40, 50 years later and really connect on a different level. So BMX is awesome, man.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think talking about the community and the connection is just to the way that we got connected was I was at Cooper's bike shop in Stillwater. And so then Guy's sister said, "Oh, you've got to meet my brother." And I called Guy. I went out to his house. He invited me out and I got to see his collection. And I started talking about this dream that I had in BMX. And this was just a thought at that point. And this was back in 23. And we were I can't remember exactly what point in the process it was, but um, anyway, as I was getting ready to leave Guy's house, I was talking to him and telling him about what I wanted to do and what I saw, and he said, "Well, somebody you need to know is Cash." And so then I reached out to you, and took a couple of weeks before we were able to get a call on schedule, and then we had a conversation, and our connection stemmed from BMX. Though we had never been in the same room for a BMX event, we had never
Right.
raced on the same track, we had never actually crossed paths in person. It's amazing the connection that we had just because of our love for the same sport.
Amen. And that's one of the cool things is a 6-year-old who races today has something in common with me, with you, 63 years old. Um, that it's the same, man. Once you're staring down the finish line and sling your leg over a BMX bike, you have commonality. And one of those beauties that we see in the sport are families who race together. You don't see a lot of moms out playing in the NFL. We we have such a unique thing that you can ride race with your parents, your brothers, your sisters, and it truly is a family affair. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even to the extent of this summer, my kids and I went out to Dirty Fest. We road tripped out to LA as a result of that. And you road tripped out there to go to the NBA
NBA
party.
reunion, yeah.
Yeah. And you got to hang out, and you and your daughter went out there, I believe. And so the memories that are made just because of BMX and our two families was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, going out, I mean, I could go for a couple hours on the NBA world with Ernie Alexander, who we all consider the godfather of BMX. And I remember the first time I mean, we were running this little track. And by this point, we had a few people helping us, and Larry Smith and Shawnee and Mrs. Cooper, Rodney Cooper's mother, who helped run concessions and signed everybody up. Like, so we had it turned into something legit. And then Ernie Alexander calls up and he said, "We want to sanction your track." And I didn't know what that meant. I thought we were in trouble. Like, what'd we do? And he explained it to me. And so I would have been 13 at that point. It's 50 years later. I get to go to California, run an event to honor him. We've been doing the NBA reunion for 7 years. And man, it has, well, I don't know, what an awesome thing. And all the old stars show up just to honor him and the people around it, and Suzanne Claspy, his wife. Man, like what a cool thing to do. And so, yes, would I get in my car and drive 3,000 miles round trip to say thank you to Ernie? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've said this many times. I have a debt to BMX that I can never pay back, that I can spend the rest of my life attempting to. And so when Ernie said, "Hey, let's do this thing," we've been working on it. Brian Dorshak is the guy that really was the life behind that event, and he needed a year off. And when and I've been to it, I've helped a little bit. I've been the MC of it the entire time. But when Ernie calls and says, "Hey, will you come out and actually run the event?" I'm like, "Yes, sir. I'll be right there." Um, and it was great. I love being able to be part, especially in these heritage events where like Dirty Fest and Frogtown and the Guy Cooper event and all these other things that are going on around the country. Like I can't believe that they let me participate.
At this time, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our 2025 sponsors who are helping us make the mission of BMX Breakthrough happen, which is to grow the sport at a local level. These sponsors, you can find more about them in the description, and then you can use their coupon codes. And you may be saying, I don't need a coupon code, but I would ask you, please use that coupon code as a way to help us all track what we're doing together. It helps them, it helps us, it helps everyone. So at our gold level, we have Box, Mongoose, and Pro Lids. At the silver level, we have Dan's Comp, LRC, and Pro Start. And at the bronze level, we have Command Aviation, Danger Snacks, Fly Racing, Gear Blocks, Justin Shepard Title Examiner, Lincoln Park BMX, Sign Dog Northwest, Sound Cedar Lumber, and Tasco. Once again, you can follow the links in our description to find out more about these phenomenal brands. You can find the coupon codes for some of them available there. And thank you so much to our 2025 sponsors. Now back to our episode.
And Guy Cooper was one of my heroes growing up. My goodness, like it's Guy Cooper. And the first time I met him is at the famous 20, I think it was 2020, maybe it was 2019. We did what was called the Rogue Race. And we were on the property where USA BMX and the Hall of Fame and then Hardesty National Track now stands. And I went out there I'd called Shane Fernandez, who helped facilitate this. I'm like, "Hey, after the National on Sunday, a bunch of us are going to break in because it had already been fenced off for construction. And we want to host the very first race on that property." And I think that, and Shane, he is such a good dude, man. He's been such an influence on BMX. He actually came out and helped. He didn't want us to go to jail. He didn't want the cops to see us breaking it, but that was one of the very first vintage style events. We all raced banana seat bikes. You had to do a wheelie in the first straightaway, and you had to make motorcycle sounds, just like we did at Guy Cooper's this year. And I know there are some guys that are way too cool for school, but we had so much fun with those events. And I encourage that, and to see Todd and Mike Miranda, what they've built is a testament to the old school, to the love of the vintage, the vintage nation movement, and they've been giant in that. Like they're both guys that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame twice. So I love watching it, and I couldn't go to Dirty Fest, unfortunately. That was the week before the Ernie Fest, um, but good times.
Absolutely. Yeah, and speaking to the race that we did at Guy's house of where all the old bikes were brought out and it was so fun and I enjoyed that probably even more than the races on Saturday just because it
Yeah,
was goofy, it was fun, it leveled the playing field. And so you had people that were really
right,
fast on other bikes that were not as fast there. Like it just brought everybody together closer, like elbow to elbow. It
right.
and it was goofy. I mean, the kids loved it. We loved watching it. It was just a different
Yeah.
experience.
Everybody there loved that event. Guy loved Bill. Like he would, message me, "Hey, here's what I'm doing on the track," and I would go check it out from time to time. And he loved building it. I loved helping, promote it and run it. The kids and the adults alike loved and the track was just rad, man. That was so cool. Um, and then the Guy Cooper event has a style, like it has a feel to it, and I haven't been to the other, there's no need to compare. But you have guys like Jody Watson flying down without a helmet, hair flowing, cigarette in his mouth, and the dude is so rad. Like there is, we're building new icons of the sport, and our sport needs that. And to see the people that came from Kansas and Nebraska, AC Chambers, man, that dude's a rock star, and Tim Lilithorpe and the boys from Wichita. How cool was that event? And it was a 2-day event, and I think it'll grow from there. I think that's our sixth running of that event, maybe fifth or sixth.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I look forward as long as they'll have me, doing it as many times as allowed.
Yeah.
And it's Guy Cooper. Growing up, man, like everybody knew Guy Cooper. Guy ran a track. Guy was a BMX guy, but our he and I are the exact same age, and so my career was ending in '80 as his was taking off in '81 and '82 when he was on factory Suzuki and winning big titles and getting big air you know. And so when you're from Oklahoma, and I really wanted a motorcycle, I never got one, so I followed Guy Cooper like crazy. Like he was to me what epitomized great BMX or great, two wheels. And to follow him and see what he accomplished, my goodness. Well, when we ran that first road race, it was me and Shane Fernandez were out setting it up. This white Jeep rolls in with a, I don't know, mid 70s Schwinn with a number plate and a single seat. And he goes, "Hey, are you the guy hosting the race?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm putting on." And he was like, "Let me just get you to sign in. What's your name?" Guy Cooper. And I'm like, "Guy Cooper, Guy Cooper?" Like that, the Guy Cooper from Stillwater that rode for Suzuki. And I knew all of his stats. And I think I kind of weirded him out. But I'm like, "Give me 1 minute." I went and sat in my car and called my wife. I'm like, "You're not going to believe this. Guy Cooper's here." you know, that was phenomenal, and we became fast friends. And I love him and Wanda. They opened their world up, man. Is just magic, and that he has the ability to go build these tracks and know what people want.
That's so cool. And it is correct that you hadn't crossed paths, even though you grew up not that far apart and you both
Right,
raced BMX in your childhood years. You
right.
didn't actually cross paths.
I don't recall that we did. I know.
Okay.
I mean, I raced all the way through '79 and a little bit in '80. But I do, when you're racing a bunch and 3 or 4 times a week, you don't remember where all you go. So I can't recall whether or not Guy and I crossed paths. If we had, I would have, I think I'd remember that. But I'm glad we did when we did because it's been awesome. And he's been a good friend to me as well. He helped me find, I had this bike when I was a kid. It was from Otasco, which is Oklahoma Tire and Supply Company. And I have wanted to find it. I bought it. I saved my money. I mowed yards. I bought it and it got stolen a month after I bought it. And I have grieved that bicycle. That bicycle to me was absolutely special. And I've looked for 30 years. I mean, I've been looking on eBay, I've been asking around, and nobody had one. And it had some unique marks. It had a black seat with a red stripe that went across it from the side. And Guy called me one day, and I mean, I've been looking. I've offered people, hey, if you see one, man, I'd love to buy one. And Guy called me one day, and when Guy Cooper calls you, you just answer. And he he's like, hey, are you near Stillwater? And I'm like, man, this sounds like an invite. Yes, I'm right near Stillwater because I live in Tulsa. I'm right near Stillwater. And he goes, hey, come and meet me at the barn. And I go there, and he goes, hey, I got something I want to show you. And he gets one of his bike hooks because he's got them hanging up on the wall. And I'm just standing there, I'm not really paying attention. I'm thinking he's going to show me an old moto bike or something because we both like those. And he pulls this bike down, and it's just, I mean, it's the Otasco.
Oops, that was a mess.
So no worries. So he pulls this bike down, and I couldn't speak. Like there it is. I mean, this was connecting me in my older age. This was 2 years ago with my 8-year-old me and everything that happened in between on two wheels. And there was the starting point, the bike that we used to wheelie sections on, and there it was. And I couldn't speak. And he goes, go put this in your truck and leave right now. I know what's about to happen here. And I've got some really cool pictures of him giving me the bike. I cried the whole way home. I don't mind admitting that. That's what cycling meant to me. And that bike particularly, and it wasn't the exact same bike as far as I know. But man, Guy Cooper restored this bike to me. He didn't restore the bike, but he brought this bike back into my life. And like, what a magic story that one of your heroes provides you the bike that you've yearned for. I mean, since I was 8, like when I would go down to Otasco, we were poor and we didn't have air conditioning, but they sold air conditioning and TV and bicycles. And man, I love the smell of tires. I used to love to go to Sears just to smell the tires when you walked in. And I loved Otasco. And my brother and I would go stand in front of the AC units. They always had them blowing with these little streamers. And that's when that bike caught my eye. And I went down there all the time. And I touched it and I messed around with it. And anyway, so to have that restored back into my possession, I don't know, it sort of changed something in me.
That is incredible. I mean, just the I completely understand. I think anybody listening to this probably has that understanding of the feeling that comes from it.
Yeah.
And that surreal moment, and regardless of if it's a specific bike or if it's or the person that's handing it to you, I think everybody kind of understands that moment. And I think one of the really cool things about the sport of BMX, and I think motocross is similar in that from people that I've talked to, is that it's just small enough that you can have those connections with the people that you looked up to.
Oh yeah, yeah, and to go to an event and Stu is there, and the fellows Perry Kramer and I've remained friends through all of this, and Eddie King and Johnny Johnson. There's just so many people from the sport that I got to be friends with. Ken Pliska out in Oregon, Jason Lycum in Wisconsin. Our connection was BMX, but I was just looking at pictures how Jason and I went out to Portland to be in Ken Pliska's wedding. Just and it's a deep connection. He was a great rider from the Northwest, but I mean these guys are everywhere. Harry Leary would show up at the Guy Cooper event. The best BMX picture that I've ever had is one of Harry Leary on a '74 Yamaha motorbike coming. We had this jump kind of in a turn, and he was doing some kind of a pitch it sideways scrub sort of deal off the side of it while winning a race against a 25-year-old who was in his class on a more modern red line. It was epic. Like I don't even know who took that picture, but oh my goodness, to be part of that. And I don't know, BMX is a sport you can live in. And that's, where your heroes are. And, even the modern day heroes. Jody Watson's one of my heroes now, man. I love watching that guy ride. I love what he does on a bicycle. So, to me, Jody is no different than Kevin McNeil or Stu Thompson or any of those guys that rode back in the day. They were excellent in their moment. And that BMX allows you to be excellent in your moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And kind of surreal moments sometimes, which is pretty cool.
oh, dude, when we Ernie and Chuck Robinson Racing arranged Chuck, we were somehow like how magic has my life been? I get a phone call and it's Chuck Robinson from this company called Webco, and he says, "Hey, we want to sponsor you." I had no idea what that meant. Like I did not know what that meant, and I like I don't know. Let me ask my mom. And I'm like, Mom, this man wants to sponsor us. Okay, honey. Okay, we can do it. And then the parts start flowing in, and the same jerseys. I mean, I've got one hanging on the wall back over there. Um, that we saw in the newspaper, Bicycle Motocross News, that is founded by Elaine Holt. The same jersey that Stu and Jeff Botima and Rick Collins were wearing, I'm wearing, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, surreal. Yeah, and then the supplies start to flow in, the new frames. Uh, that little crew, we were the first people to test the Skyway wheels, which sounds really cool, but they weren't really as operational as they are today. And the amount of free stuff was I mean, like when you grow up poor and all this free, really cool stuff is coming in, and then you get a call from Chuck and Ernie and Rick Toomey, hey, we want to fly you guys to California to race at the very first ever Grand Nationals. And I'm like, yes, I'm not going to ask my mom. Yes, we're coming. We're doing that. And we'd never been on an airplane. And, Matt and Carrie and I are like, I wonder what it's like. Does your face go back? I mean, like, what do you feel? And we didn't know. And we get off the airplane, man, flying into LAX at night when you've lived in Oklahoma your entire life and maybe been out of the state once to go to race BMX in Wichita. And you're flying into LAX. It was just a different world. And I get off the airplane and there is Chuck Robinson, who we recognized, Stu Thompson, and Jeff Botima there. And they were my first teammates. And I got to grow up with that. And Stu and I've played golf together and been friends. And he comes to lots of the events. And he's a wonderful guy. He was a great rider, obviously, but he's also very funny. And still friends with Botima. I don't know, man. When you get off the plane and there's Stu Thompson and Jeff Botima, what do you do with that? Like you start to recognize you've had a charmed life. And truly, BMX is what did it for me. I wanted a motorcycle. I got a bicycle. And I don't think a motorcycle would have ever put me in the moment where you have a Stu and Jeff picking you up at the airport, or John Paul Freeman taking you around in his mini truck. Just it was unbelievable. Like the sensory overload for a hick from the sticks out on the West Coast was, I don't know, it's really hard to explain. But I'm
And
glad it happened.
and how old did you say you were when they flew you out to LA?
First Grands, November 22nd, 1975. So I would have just turned 14.
Okay.
I just
Wow.
turned 14. Yeah. And you get
Wow.
there, and that's the first day I met Scott Breithaupt and, oh man, Perry Kramer. And that's John Paul Freeman was at that race, John George, Byron Friday. And those guys had come through for a summer tour, I believe, in 75. And then I got to go on tour with Scott and the boys in 76. I don't know why my mom thought it was such a great idea to send her 14-year-old baby, cross country with a bunch of BMX riders. Just and the stories. I mean, when you hear the stories of the road, you think they're making them up, and I'm like, no, they're just very normal. Pulling into a Howard Johnson's, and Scott would go in and distract the guy, and we'd jump in the pool with a bar of soap. You know, it is not a clean life to go on tour with a dozen other guys in a van or two. Um, so like just I don't know, man. Looking back, I can't believe I did most of the stuff. Jeff Utterback was on that tour, and he's a great dude. And he and I raced at Dusty Trails together in Minerva, Ohio. If you ever meet any of the old guys, man, ask them about Dusty Trails. Legendary. We raced down a motorcycle uphill, so it was a hill climb event, and we raced down it, and that's as scared as I've ever been on a BMX bike.
That sounds fascinating in so many ways.
Yeah, just that whole thing. I'm in a van. And, there's a couple stories I probably don't want to tell, but I found out that we didn't have to pay for food at every venue because we were famous. And I called my mom. You're not going to believe this. I'm calling her from a payphone in East St. Louis, with not a good part. But I'm like, Mom, you're not going to believe this. We don't have to pay for food at some of these restaurants because we're famous. And anyway, she said, put Ernie on the phone. Okay. And uh, and I just heard him going, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, no, you don't need to come out here. Anyway, I don't know. I got to live a great dream. I got to be part of something worldwide at a time when it wasn't even gaining influence. It was just gaining notoriety. And I got to be part of that. I'll tell you, how sometimes artists paint one of 200. I'm one of 20 million. I'm just one of 20 million kids who are doing it. And I got to be there at an influential time. Not that I was influential, but Elaine Holt, um, unbelievably influential in the sport of BMX. Um, I mean, the people that were creating bikes at that point, Skip Hess and Tom Seifert, who created Matthews. In fact, a little known thing. I just want to plug this real quick. The Oklahoma Hall of Fame, which I run and administer now. Now we have some other people. We're creating a thing called the Foundation Award, and that is for two types of people. One, the people that are already in the National Hall of Fame don't need to be in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame as a special inductee. Instead, people like Matt Hoffman and Jeff Ruminer are called foundation members. And we're creating a special section of foundation members of people who had an influence in Oklahoma but maybe didn't live in Oklahoma. And in 2025, we are inducting Elaine Holt, who ran BMX News, and Tom Seifert, who created Matthews Motocross, which has my name on it, not his. But what a legend he was. So he will be inducted into the Oklahoma Foundation, the Hall of Fame this year as a foundation member as well. And they don't know that. They get that call tonight.
Wow.
Yeah, that call goes out this evening, and I am excited, man. I've spent the last few years just saying thank you to people because you know I owe that. And I look at I mean, Matthews Motocross, what an impact. And I mean, and there's a funny story behind that. I've been going to nationals since the first grands. And after the 80s, people would, even though I wasn't riding a bunch, I would go to the grands every year, and people would come up and go, "Man, dude, I used to race one of your frames back in the 70s." Like, you did? Which one? Oh, I had the Matthews MS1. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm really glad to hear that. When that bike came out, I was 12." And and I'm so glad that you rode one. And they're like, "You were 12?" Like, "Yeah, I was younger." And they're like, "Oh, so you didn't run that company? That's not your company?" No, it's not my company. And that still happens, man. I rode one of your frames back in the day, and I just enjoy it now. So
That's great.
you'll see at the Grands this year that it'll happen. And it used to, I'm kind of a literal person, and it used to bother me a little bit. And now I love it. Like I realize that, man, people love BMX. You know, there were so many people that got to ride. I was at my dermatologist's office last year down in Austin, and I was going to the Ernie thing. He goes, "Where are you headed?" I'm like, "I'm going to California for an NBA BMX thing." And now my dermatologist turns into an 8-year-old. He's like, "You raced BMX?" I'm like, "Yeah, did you?" "Oh man, I had a Skyway this and mag wheels and this, and I could do a kick flip and a this and that." And he turns into an 8-year-old. Um, and I've just seen that happen over and over and over, where somebody who's gone on to have a nice professional career, but also had a BMX career. I bumped into a dude who met me when we were on that tour with Ernie and Scott Breithaupt, and he met me in Atlanta. And I was at a real estate closing for a friend of mine. I was just sitting in, and this guy that high up in the food chain, and he's like, "This is going to sound weird. Were you in Atlanta in 1976?" I went, "Yeah." "At a BMX event?" "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh man, I got your autograph." And da, 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 da. And he goes from business professional to 8-year-old. And I love it. And I think that happens, for the guys that were, the super high level guys like Stu and Jeff and all the Greg Hill and the Pattersons. I mean, they had a following. I would get recognized from time to time, but those people had a following. And what a cool thing for them as well.
Wow. That's pretty cool. It's it's fun to hear those stories. It's really fun to be a part of those conversations. I was just at the kids at our kids' school the other day and had a conversation with somebody who told me that he grew up in Southern California and grew up riding. And so I mentioned a few names like Mike Miranda and Toby Henderson and stuff. And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, I know them." Yeah. And we had a conversation and but it's just a connection point of something that you may not have anything in common with these people,
Right.
and now all of a sudden you have great relationship, or great conversation, a great talking point, and you can at least start to build that relationship
Yeah, you
off
can
of
have
it.
adult conversations instead of, "Hey, you cut me off in the first turn."
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's cool to have these adult conversations and see people's lives are interesting.
Yeah.
I thought Stu's life was interesting. He was a sheriff and he went through all of that, after being Stu. And I was always like, I wonder what it's like to be arrested by Stu Thompson. You know, like,
Interesting.
would
Yeah.
you be in the back? Would you be in the back of the cruiser asking for his autograph?
I wonder how that breaks down if you're arrested by Stu Thompson and it was because of a misdemeanor on your bicycle.
I don't know. I would assume he'd be kind of lenient.
Um, so I was curious, also, so you were in that the season of time between the first Grands and Grands moving to Oklahoma. So I'm curious, do you remember that that shift? Do you remember it coming over here and
Oh yeah, yeah,
what that
absolutely. It started. I
what
mean,
that move was for?
we one of the Shawnee track grew, and we had a big national there, and then like the '78 Schwinn Summer Tour came through, and I don't recall the year, but the first NBA Grands was in Newhall, California at Randall Ranch. That's the first Grands. No matter what anybody says, that was the first one. Um, and what a phenomenal race. And then the Shawnee National kept getting bigger, and it was just a confluence of events, though. It wasn't just one thing. But they moved it to the Oklahoma City Fairgrounds, and I don't know if it was called the Grands then. I believe it was. Now, around that same time, ABA was having Grands also. So I can't speak to all of that, but somehow they merged, and ABA USA BMX has done a great job in promoting the Grands, and I'm a fan of what has happened there. But then it went secondly to the Myriad Convention Center downtown Oklahoma City. And I mean, what an amazing venue. It's really a smaller stadium style deal, and you had to keep your bikes outside. And it was right near the Skirvin Plaza Hotel, which is fancy. And it was a neat interaction between fancy and dirty. And I don't know all that went on over there, but it was at the Myriad for a while. I believe came to Tulsa in the mid '80s, and I could be off on that. We need to get, you know, we need to get an expert on that. Um, but uh, yeah, I just noticed it. I didn't, people say, oh, BMX, the Grands came to Oklahoma because of what was going on in Shawnee. That may be true. I mean, we certainly put BMX on the map in Shawnee, but you can't have Shawnee without having the Moore track and the Oklahoma City track and the Claremore track and the Tulsa tracks. They're it's one thing. BMX is one thing. And so I don't like the inference that Shawnee had the sole influence on the Grands. I don't believe that's accurate. I think Shawnee was one of the active participants. And when a group does something, that's when it has impact. So I went to them. I watched them. Um, I enjoyed sitting up in the stands and watching the 8-year-old novices. I still do. I love watching young kids race. I love watching the parents of young kids get excited about little Johnny taking his first lap. I dig that, man. That's some of my favorite stuff. Um, your mom doesn't get up and scream and shake the fence when you're up to bat in Little League or T-ball, but in BMX they do. And I love the enthusiasm of the parent-child relationship in there. But I went to as many grands as I could. I didn't go all the time, but I tried to. And what a ride, man.
Yeah.
I don't even know how old the grands is, but what is that?
Mm.
Gotta be 45 years old.
Yeah, it's getting up there.
And
I
the Hall
mean,
of Hall of Fame is 45 years old, I think. So
okay.
yeah, man. How lucky were we just to be a bunch of dirt clods on a bike,
Yeah. Well,
and it turned into something.
and I do like that the conversation about Grands and I knew that you had some sort of an influence on that, but I mean, uh, my my guess was that it was not a one person show that moved it out here, but I like the honorary mention that it was just it, it was everybody that was doing things and the movement and the momentum. And do you know if it was just the culmination of all the energy and momentum that was happening in this or in this area, or did it have to do with the the location of the country or
I think all of those things.
okay.
That we're in the center of the country, that you could legitimately call it the Grands, and it's equal opportunity to fly from both coasts, or and there were a lot of riders in Oklahoma, and there were a lot of riders in Texas, and Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri. There was a strong contingent of BMX racing going on. Some of the great riders, guys like John Pyant and Jeffrey Winter, of course, Tim Lilithorpe, and the Moore brothers from Kansas, and Tim, I forgot Tim's last name. He was on the Mongoose team with us. Tim Richardson. There were great riders in these areas. John Copeland from Oklahoma, Dallas Labrada. We had great riders in this state, and it was because we were one of the first states running. I mean that's you do something longer than the other guy, you're going to be better. But there, I mean, one of the great mentions for how did it happen would go to the Shawnee Optimist Club. They had far more influence than I did. And there's no writer that has had so much influence that they've left that footprint. And if I've left a footprint, it would be from the composite book of work that we all did together. Um, but I forget how old I was, and I want this story told. Is I went to the Optimist Club, and we needed help running the track. It was just a bunch of kids running the track. And Larry Smith was running a bike shop though, and Saturdays were hard. But man, that dude, that's why he's in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. So I went to the Optimist Club to speak. And I got up and said my little thing. Hey, we need some help running the track, and you guys can keep, we don't want any money. You guys do it as a fundraiser. And they kind of huddled up and went, well, we're not able to help you at this time. And I mean, I was either 12 or 13. I was a kid, and I am unhappy. I'll just say I'm unhappy. And it was one of those rubber chicken meals where everybody gets the same thing, and I'm over there eating my food. And Harold Downey says, "Gentlemen, before we say the Optimist Creed, does anybody have any business that they like to discuss?" And I raised my hand up, and I'm like, "Well, your sign on your podium says friend of the boy. I'm the only boy in here, and you're refusing to help me." And I sat back down, and Harold goes, "Guys, he kind of has a point." And they huddled up again and they went, okay, we'll run your track for 1 year. Okay, we'll take it. They ran it for 19 years. It was one of their best fundraisers in all of Oklahoma to go to the Optimist Club. And what a great contribution the Optimists made in the world, but also to BMX. Those men and women who also joined the Optimist Club later, if you want to find a thumbprint on the Grands, it's theirs. And what a thing they did to facilitate it. We needed facilitators. Riders were easy. We were everywhere. Um, but I mean, those guys came in alongside Larry Smith, Jay Gunter, who's in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, for his work. Like when that track was going, he worked for the city, and we went to the city and asked for help, and they laughed at us. But there was a guy named Jay Gunter, and he had an office there, and he's like, "What do you guys need?" And for years, he came out on his own time with his own tractor and worked on the track for us. You know, and I mean, where would we be without that guy? We I don't know, man. It's you could and Cliff Ruminer, Jeff Ruminer's dad. You know, he is he will absolutely be a nominee for the Oklahoma Track Operator Industry Hall of Fame. What a contribution he made. He wrote a newspaper, he ran races, he worked on the track, he ran the gate. And even though his son was a dominant racer, he treated everybody equally. We BMX in Oklahoma would be far behind if it weren't for Cliff Ruminer
Wow.
and Matt's dad and my dad and my brother and you know, so I promise you, there's more than one thumbprint on that idea of the Grands being here.
That's pretty cool. It's fun to hear those stories because understanding the history of something and knowing kind of where things come from and knowing the history of the original BMX tracks in any given area, I think is just fun. And so I appreciate you taking the time to go through that because
And I love it.
and to give credit to those people because like you said, it's not one, there's no track out there that runs off of one person. And
Never.
I mean, and the track that wants to run off of one person, they're probably not doing a very good job. Um,
It's exhausting. And,
yeah.
I wish I could just dump my mind into a supercomputer about all the experiences that I have when the first tour rolls in town. And it was like Fast Times at Ridgemont High when Byron Friday rolls out of the Shimano van that was driven by Jim Emerson, who ran San Fernando Valley, Peddlers West in San Fernando Valley. One of the most influential guys in BMX. Um, he falls out. There's John Paul Freeman, um, Eric Richter, John. If you've never seen John George ride a bicycle, still to this day one of the all-time great cyclists in the history of the game. Man, that guy. When we saw him ride, we realized we were not prepared. Bobby Encinas, one of the very first Hall of Famers, and so deserving of all the recognition he got. They spill out of a van I'm at the bike shop with Larry Smith, hanging out. This van pulls up, and all these guys. And I mean, we had about a month or two before Matt and I had called John Paul Freeman, and because phones were expensive then, we had to write down all the things we wanted to say to him. And it was not too, you could dial whatever 411 and get somebody's phone number. And he lived in Santa Monica. We got his phone number. And this issue of BMX News had come out describing the Gold Cup win that JP had over Friendly Fred. I mean, just reading it, we would read it out loud and go, man, what is that? And anyway, we called John Paul Freeman and we had a list of questions, but his brother Peter or Philip, he has two other brothers, answered the phone and we're like, can we talk to John Paul Freeman? And he wasn't there, which screwed everything up. But we went, well, could you ask him the following questions? And we had his brother, or we think, write down, so number one is we wanted to congratulate you on being excellent at BMX. And then that's when we went, hey, we want him to come out and race the Shawnee National this summer. And all I remember is Philip going, I don't know if he knows what roads to take. That's how raw BMX was. And I'm still friends with JP. He was at the NBA reunion and I got to hang out with him and what a contribution he made as well. So man, I got to live right in the middle of all that. I was on a couple cool teams, um, but I'm on Team BMX, man, and that is the best team to be on. And there's millions of people who are on Team BMX with me, so we're all teammates.
Well, I one of the statements you have made, and I think it sticks with me a lot, is you have said, "I will clean bathrooms if it will help BMX."
Yeah,
And it's just the value that BMX has given me, the value that I've watched it give to my kids, the value that I've seen it provide to so many other kids right now. I mean, there's a whole group of kids that are joining BMX as a result of school leagues now in Oklahoma.
right,
And I'm just watching these kids that are being given value and who may not have otherwise found value through a sport.
right. Well, I've been told that if you give somebody something to do, their life will turn out okay. But if you give somebody something to become, that the odds of success in life in general are much better. And BMX allows you to become something where there's not really another venue to go become a district champion, a state champion, a podium winner, to get in a magazine. My goodness, like to put kids in magazines where they can see themselves. And, BMX allows you to become something special. And all you have to do is choose it, you know, and, man, life can be difficult when you're young, but to have something to throw yourself into, like cycling, man, that it is game changing, and it was for me. And I am 63 years old. I turned 64 in a month, and I can tell you all the days of my life have been better because I was on a BMX bike.
I love that. That's amazing. Cash, I'm so thankful for your friendship and for your time and conversations and stories, and I really do appreciate it.
Well, let's do a version two of this, and I'll send you all of my 1972 Superman pictures and all the. That was one of the great things back in the day. We all had Polaroids and little cameras, and we took so many pictures. And I've got I mean, we photographed the early days, and man, I still like going through all of those. And let's do a session too, and just talk about the old days.
That's awesome. Well, I've got some ideas for how to do that. So, yeah, we'll circle back in some time here, and I'm working on a new studio, and so it would be fun to do something in person. So,
Well, Jay, what you're doing for BMX is great, also.
oh, well,
And
thank you.
one of the interesting things is we don't know that we're in the good times when we all look back on the good times, but the hard part is to know when you're in them, and you're in it. Man, when I saw your son riding a Moto Mag Mongoose, like I lost it, man. That was like, God, that is so awesome. And I hope he rides that till he's 50. I know it's a mini goose, but still, man, just Mongoose, Moto Mags, that's I don't know, that's bigger than just being a cool bike. That was legendary. And what you're doing with the podcast and creating awareness and starting and promoting BMX teams and going to the BMX events. Your kids may or may not remember the event, but they'll remember going there with you. And that in and of itself is legacy, and you're creating a legacy for yourself.
Well, thank you.
Keep it up.
I appreciate it. It's been fun. We love BMX, and when I told the kids that we were working on starting a team for the kids at their school, they freaked out. They were so excited for their friends to be
Yeah.
able to ride BMX with them.
Well, if I can help in any way with that, man, when I heard that was happening, I'm like, I don't know, man, my life has come full circle. You all I wanted to do in high school was ride my bike. My first date that I ever went on, I didn't know how dates work, but this girl sort of liked me, and I rode my BMX bike to her house, and we were going to see the Evil Knievel movie. And her dad, who is this giant cop, he's like enormous. Like I've got my bike up against the door and I'm kind of ramming the door instead of knocking. And he opens the door and he's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're going to take her downtown to the theater on your bike?" And I'm like, "Oh, no." And so he drove us. But I don't know, man. My bike was always involved, and you know, it's I'm the luckiest guy in the world that God said no you can't have a motorcycle. Check this bicycle thing out. And, I took the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference.
It's pretty cool. Doesn't
Well,
always seem like the best option when you're the kid and not getting the motorcycle, but looking back in hindsight, pretty cool.
yeah, some of God's greatest gifts are when he says no.
It's true.
Yeah, and no can also mean a much bigger yes. So anyway, Jay, thanks for having me on the show, man. I'm so glad to be here, and I look forward to more.
Cash, thank you so much. Have an incredible day. We'll talk
Going
soon.
to. Thanks, man. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.